The REAL ID Act, passed by Congress in 2005, signifies a significant step towards enhancing travel security in the United States. This act establishes minimum security standards for state-issued driver's licenses and identification cards. The REAL ID Act's implementation aims to prevent the use of fraudulent identification, which could potentially be used for illicit activities, including terrorism. It's a crucial step towards fortifying the nation's security infrastructure. The impetus for the REAL ID Act stemmed from the recommendations of the 9/11 Commission, which underscored the importance of more secure identification documents. The tragic events of September 11, 2001, exposed vulnerabilities in the existing identification system. The REAL ID Act directly addresses these vulnerabilities by setting stringent requirements for identification issuance, making it considerably more difficult for individuals to obtain fake IDs. The REAL ID Act affects various aspects of everyday life, including air travel and access to secure federal facilities. Beginning May 7, 2025, travelers will need a REAL ID-compliant driver's license or identification card to board commercial flights within the United States. Similarly, individuals seeking entry to federal facilities, such as military bases and nuclear power plants, will also be required to present a REAL ID-compliant form of identification. The implementation of the REAL ID Act represents a collective effort to strengthen national security. By setting rigorous standards for identification, the Act aims to make it significantly more difficult for individuals to assume false identities or engage in fraudulent activities. The REAL ID Act is not merely about enhancing travel security, it's about safeguarding the nation from potential threats. Starting May 7, 2025, enforcement of the REAL ID Act will become a reality at airports across the United States. This means that travelers will be required to present a REAL ID-compliant driver's license or identification card, or an acceptable alternative form of identification, at Transportation Security Administration checkpoints. The enforcement of the REAL ID Act is intended to enhance security measures and ensure the safety of all passengers. Passengers who do not possess a REAL ID-compliant identification will not be immediately turned away from airport security checkpoints. However, they should be prepared to undergo additional screening procedures. These procedures may include providing additional forms of identification or answering security questions. While these measures are in place to ensure security, they may result in slightly longer wait times at security checkpoints. The TSA has been actively working to prepare for the enforcement of the REAL ID Act. This includes collaborating with airlines, airports, and other stakeholders in the travel industry to raise awareness about the new requirements. The TSA has also implemented training programs for its officers to ensure they are well-versed in the REAL ID Act's guidelines and can effectively enforce them. Travelers are strongly encouraged to acquire a REAL ID-compliant identification well in advance of the May 7, 2025 enforcement date. By doing so, they can avoid potential delays and ensure a smoother travel experience. Remember, being prepared is key to navigating the new security landscape at airports. Identifying a REAL ID-compliant identification is relatively straightforward. These cards are typically marked with a star located in the upper portion of the card. The star serves as a visual indicator that the identification meets the requirements set forth by the REAL ID Act. However, it's essential to note that the specific design and placement of the star may vary slightly depending on the issuing state. For those who do not yet possess a REAL ID-compliant identification, the process of obtaining one is relatively simple. Individuals need to visit their local Department of Motor Vehicles office and provide the required documentation, which generally includes proof of identity, date of birth, social security number, and residency. The specific documentation requirements may differ slightly depending on the state of residence. The cost of obtaining a REAL ID-compliant identification can also vary from state to state. Some states may offer REAL ID-compliant identification at no additional cost when renewing an existing driver's license or identification card, while others may charge a nominal fee. It's advisable to check with your local DMV office for specific information regarding fees and documentation requirements. Alternatives to a REAL ID-compliant driver's license or identification card include a valid U.S. passport, a U.S. military ID, or a permanent resident card. These alternative forms of identification are equally acceptable for boarding domestic flights and entering secure federal facilities. It's important to note that the TSA accepts other forms of identification as well, and a comprehensive list is available on their official website. The May 7, 2025 enforcement date for the REAL ID Act is not a deadline for obtaining a compliant identification. Individuals can apply for a REAL ID compliant driver's license or identification card at any time after this date. However, it's highly recommended to obtain one as soon as possible to avoid potential travel disruptions and ensure compliance with the new security regulations. The TSA has been actively engaged in public awareness campaigns to educate the public about the REAL ID Act and its implications for travel. These campaigns utilize various platforms including social media, airport signage, and partnerships with travel organizations to disseminate information effectively. The goal is to ensure that travelers are well informed about the upcoming changes and can make necessary preparations. The implementation of the REAL ID Act marks a significant stride towards fortifying air travel security in the United States. By establishing stringent requirements for identification, the Act aims to mitigate the risk of fraudulent identification use and enhance overall safety for all passengers. As we approach the enforcement date, it's crucial for travelers to be informed, prepared, and equipped with the appropriate identification. The REAL ID Act represents a collective effort to enhance national security while ensuring the smooth flow of air travel. By understanding the requirements, obtaining the necessary identification, and staying informed about any updates, travelers can navigate the evolving landscape of air travel security with confidence. Remember, preparation is key to a seamless and secure travel experience in the years to come.